Hi, everybody. Welcome to Discover College Soccer. Today, we're going to take a little bit of a different path than we normally do, but I'm lucky enough today to be joined by Buford Mobley out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Welcome, Buford.
Thank you.
So, Buford is part of a Facebook group called the Soccer Parent Lifestyle, and in it, he had posted about the journey that his son took, being part of a very large club, over 14,000 players, and how he kind of took the pathway, which is the hot topic term everybody's using these days, the player pathway, about getting from being a youth player up through college. So I thought it would be great to have Buford on and kind of just discuss what his personal family experience was like in that pathway, and hopefully that'll resonate with some of our folks and maybe help some others and get some insights that they didn't even know. So Buford, let's just talk a little bit about it. You know, when did your son start playing? When did you kind of start the travel soccer parent experience for you guys?
Okay, well, just to give you a little background, I never played soccer as a kid. Never went to a soccer game until I got to school at Clemson University. That was the first soccer game that I ever went to. But when my son started playing rec at probably maybe about 5 years old, and he played rec up until U8.
That's about when the first travel kind of gets kicked off at most places around that U8 time frame. That's
Yes,
my youngest is in that right now, so that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Well, one of the things that's unique about North Carolina, they actually have they have recreation, and then they have a middle step called challenge, where you don't really have travel ball. You just play amongst people in your town.
Okay.
And of course, we played at Castle, which at the time was 11,000 kids. So we had enough kids to have basically our own league. So it was playing within, all kids within our club.
Yep.
So, but it was competitive. So, we kept scoring and kept up who was champions and all that kind of stuff. But there was no travel involved. So that's kind of an intermediate step, which I thought was pretty cool. And then at the next level, you had classic, which is where you get into your travel ball, where you go out and travel. Mm-hmm. So Dante played challenge up until U11. And, if I had to do it over again, he probably would have started playing classic a year earlier than he did. I believe at the time, U10 was the first year you were eligible to play classic. But of course, back then I didn't know about any of that stuff. I just kind of went with the flow.
Yeah.
So he played challenge up until U11. Everything was going great. And then U12, he went to trials for classic. And that's when the fun began. The classic trials for 4 days. So Monday through Thursday, and it was like at 4:00. And I don't know if you know anything about the Raleigh-Durham area, but at 4:00 is not the time to be out trying to get kids around. And
sure.
We actually live in Cary, and the trials were in North Raleigh. And at the time, my wife was working out at Research Triangle Park, and I worked in North Raleigh, and my son went to school in downtown Raleigh. So we were all over the place. But anyway, we got in there, and there were about 85 kids out there. And, after the 4 days, I came home, I said, it's in the bag, it's just a matter of which team they put him on. And we got the call, and they said he didn't make it. And honestly, I was absolutely shocked. But I found out later that they only had 5 spots open for those 85 kids. And of course, at a club like Castle, which is now NCFC, they pretty much know who, if they only had got 5 spots, they knew the 5 kids before they even went out there. So, me being a rookie and not knowing any better, I blew up. I just said, I'm not dealing with this. So we moved to a club called Triangle Football Club, which was another club here in Cary, and we loved it. Now, when we first moved over there, because in North Carolina, everybody does tryouts the same day, the same time, and I understand why they do that. But Dante had to go through supplemental tryouts, so he was automatically put on the bottom team, which I was fine with. We're the newcomers.
Sure.
Put on the bottom team. And that first season, his team went 1-12, and they won 1 game by forfeit. And I think at the time they were playing 9v9. And, a lot of people say, well, that had to be awful. And it wasn't fun, but it was probably the best thing that could have happened to my son. I mean, he learned so many lessons. He learned, how to play hard. He learned that he had to be in shape because they had they played 9v9, and I think had 10 kids on the roster and played most games with 8 kids. So they played most games a man down. So, he never came out. He got used to playing hard till the final whistle. And of course he got used to adversity. So it turned out to be a great season for him. We went in that spring season, same team. They did a little better. They improved their record. So the next year, they have tryouts and he gets put on the top team. So he goes from the absolute bottom team, which I think TFC had about 6 teams per age group at that time.
Wow.
So he was like from team number 6 to the top team. So, and that was the first year they went full field. So, that was an adjustment. And they played in what's called, I guess, now the Premier Division. They have so many divisions, they change every year, but they went to a tournament before that season started in Charlotte and played the defending state cup champions. And I think they got beat like 13-0. It was awful. But they hung in there and they got better and better and better. They had a really good coach. I thought he was a good coach, and they got better and better and better and better. And so to make a long story short, at the end of that year, we get an invite for the Development Academy. So I thought, okay, here we go. We're on our way. A week later, we get notification that TFC and Castle are merging to form NCFC. So, learned a big lesson there is I'm so glad that I didn't blow up when we left Castle, because, if I'd have told them exactly the way I felt and what I felt about them, Dante probably could have never shown his face on the field there. But, there's a lesson, always, if you're going to switch clubs, leave your current club the right way, because you never know what's going to happen. And we left the club, and 2 years later, we're back at the same place.
Yeah.
So goes to NCFC. And of course, my biggest regret was that, like I say, Dante was getting ready to go into the Development Academy. And so when they merged, you kind of get lost in the shuffle. And he's put on like the 5th or 6th team. We have like 15 teams per age group. So he's on like the 5th or 6th team. And of course, I think he's placed wrong, but as a parent, you can't really say anything, because And I understand how it is for coaches, because at a club this size, I'm sure they've got 300 parents saying my kid is in the wrong place. So, I get it. So, we just kind of went with the flow, and I said, okay, well, we'll give me a year to get it sorted out, because the first year was just, way too many kids. Well, still way too many kids, but first year was unorganized, way too many kids. Everybody was overwhelmed. So we stuck with it. Next year comes along, and Dante gets an invitation to try out for the classic, what NCFC calls Classic Elite, which is basically now the ECNL regional league teams. I know this is probably confusing to everybody, but
well, I'll stop you there just for a second, Buford, because one of the things that I've seen in your Facebook group and a lot of the other ones is there is confusion when it comes to leagues and which is better and which is everything else. The one thing I want everybody to know is it changes every 3 to 5 years. It seems that we're in this rotation of alphabet soup of who's in charge of what league, and everybody's in the effort to build the better mousetrap and create the predominant national best competition league. And it's different on the boys side and the girls side, and that just keeps changing. And when you've got really 3 governing bodies in the mix with US soccer, US youth soccer, and US club soccer, and you could probably throw in MLS in there because now the switch, it's tough. And there is no, which is the best, quote unquote. You're going to get 10 different answers from 10 different people because they've had 10 different experiences.
And it depends on where you are. I've seen, when we have our big showcase and teams come from all over the country, there are teams that, play in, I guess what they call select league or whatever, just a regular town club team that can beat the brakes off an ECNL team.
Absolutely. And
there are places where a lot of kids, there is no top league team in their area. So the top league team level kids are playing on this team, and they can play with anybody in the country. They just don't have the name. So, the league the league itself doesn't matter. It's where you are in your local area. You have to look and see where the best place for your kid is. And I tell a lot of parents, it's not always necessarily that top league. I mean,
absolutely.
If there are 20 kids on the team and your kid is number 19 to 20 on the top team and playing 10 minutes a game, they would be much better served playing on the next lower team and playing, 70 out of the 80 minutes or, 70 out of 90 minutes and developing. You can't develop playing 10 minutes a game sitting on the bench.
Well, and the other piece of that is at U12, U13, U14, that you need to be developing and playing. And yes, if you're really good, you want to be playing with good players and against good players to help your development. But to your point exactly, it's not helping if you're just in a car for 8 hours to play for 8 minutes. So absolutely. So, and I could tell you the alphabet soup of leagues, as well as my club might call the top team Premier, the second team Elite, and the third team Select. And your club might call it Elite, Select, Premier. Everybody has different naming conventions, and I see it even on the Facebook group. So my team is a gold team. I don't know what that means in Florida here for like my club. We don't, does that mean you play in gold level tournaments, which means you're the top, or I don't know what that means. So just don't get caught up in all the terminology and the acronyms and all that kind of stuff. yeah, so sorry for that aside, but I figured it would be good to get it
Oh
out there.
no.
So you're back to where you're at. Your son's now been invited to try out for basically
classic,
ECNL regional league team level. We'll call it that level. Yeah.
At the time there was no boys ECNL, but that's the level our club plays on. It's that level team.
Okay.
But at our club it's invitation only, which always drove me nuts because I believe there should be open trials. That's just a personal thing, but it always drove me nuts. It was invitation only, but he did get invited, and they had 2 fields, and I sat out there for 4 days and watched, and there, although like I say, I've never played soccer, but by this time I've had 7 or 8 years into the game, and you got the field over here where all the coaches are looking and taking notes. And you got the field over here where my son was, where none of the coaches are looking and taking notes. And every now and again, they call somebody from my son's field to go to the other field. And, those 4 days, my son played out of his mind. I mean, but there was nobody watching. So needless to say, he didn't make that level, which, infuriated me. But here again, this is a classic lesson about not always worrying about being on this team, that team, whatever. So this is when he's going into his freshman year. Trials were in May of his 8th grade year, so he's going to start high school the next August. Well, it turns out that the coach of his team that he did get assigned to is his high school coach for the next 4 years. So he gets a head start there. And that year was probably his biggest jump in development out of his whole year. I mean, he just blossomed and grew and matured. And so, what started off as, we were mad and my son was upset that he didn't make this team, turned out to be a blessing in disguise. So we go through that, and then the next year, spring of that year, this was at a big club. This is where, a lot of kids can fall through the cracks. And at a big club, like I say, I understand why coaches don't like parents talking to them about, where their son or daughter should be, whatever. But at a big club, you have to advocate for your kid because they can fall through the cracks. But spring of that year, they're playing a game, and it is 35 degrees. It's sleeting sideways. I mean, just nasty weather out there. And I'm standing out there, and my son had to play a new position he never played because somebody got hurt, and his coach put him there, which was holding midfielder, and I thought he played great, and he came on the field and said, I played terrible. Well, that afternoon we get a call, and it's the Development Academy coaches for his age group, the 04 Development Academy coaches. And they said, how long has your son been playing for the club? And I said, well, since U8, U9.
Right.
he was U15 by the end. Yeah. I said, so, 6 years. And they were like, well, he needs to be playing up because he's, it's obvious that he can play at a higher level. And, I was saying to myself, I'm glad somebody else sees that. I've been trying to tell you guys that for 3 years. But so they invited him to the scrimmage the next day, and he went to the scrimmage and did well. And then we didn't hear from anybody. So I was like, well, I guess he fell through the cracks again. So we get to tryouts, and they move him up to the elite team, which is at the time was the team right below the Development Academy. So it's a top team that you could play in the club without being in the academy.
Yeah.
And so he played there. So, apparently the coaches said something, but it's a shame that it took them seeing him at that game to finally get put where I thought was somewhere, near where he should have been, And of course, like I say, I don't blame the club because, they just got way too many kids. There's no way kids can get individual attention.
It's difficult
in the club with 15,000 kids.
Well, and another point that I want to bring up to people is, and I'm not saying, because I've never seen your son kick a ball, so I can't make any judgment about your son. But the one thing I can say is, as a former player and coach, everybody develops at a different time, and it's sometimes that the kid who is the best U8 player on the field by U14 can sometimes be terrible. Oh, yeah. And it's just because they didn't get any better. They just peaked early and their development just didn't happen, and they've been trudging along, and parents are like, we'll see parents at a club, oh man, but my kid, she's so good or he's so good, and they've done this and this, and they're remembering under 8, but when you watch them at 14, 15, you can see they're not with their peers now. But and then the flip side of that is true. I mean, I'm a prime example. I was really small in high school, and not as fast, and it got to my junior year, and the coach comes up, and we had, now granted, when I was a junior, we had like 14 seniors on my high school team. So the coach says, hey, look, there's 14 seniors, and we got a couple really good juniors, couple like all-state sophomores and stuff. Like, I really need you to play JV as a junior, which, just stuck a knife in my heart. Like, oh my God, I'm not even good enough to make varsity as a junior. He's like, but you're going to come up for the tournament. We've got a bunch of people graduating because I need you next year. You're good, but just not, because I was developing. And so sure enough, I played JV my junior year. I played one season of varsity soccer in high school. And this is, 25 years ago, when high school soccer meant a lot more than it does today. Yes. But I started 4 years of college soccer. So, I mean, my 16 to 20 development was huge compared to my 12 to 16 development. And so, for anybody who, is saying I can't do it, or I'm not good enough, or whatever, people change, and it can change quick, especially in that, during puberty and growth and speed.
On the boys' side, it changes. I guess my son, when he was his 9th grade year, when he was a freshman, he was about 5'8", 125 pounds. He was real skinny. He's a senior now, and he's 6'1", 190. So I mean, that's a huge difference.
And it's not only that, but it's how it's not just your body. Obviously there's growth there, but how do I use this body now? How can I still have, good touch on the ball? So my oldest daughter right now is 14, and she's got a couple girls on her team that have shot up, and they fall down all the time. And it's because they just grow so fast. They're not grown into their bodies.
My son went through at about 13. He was, he had a growth spurt. And
yep. So needless to say, I just wanted to make sure people understand that, things are going to change year to year, even especially in a big club. That's when they, yes, it's hard sometimes for them to notice everybody and keep track of everybody, but sometimes seeing just that little change in a player, that maybe I didn't see last year that I see this year. And that can be a physical growth. It can be a mental maturity growth. It can be just all of those things combined in a game situation or a practice situation or anything. And that can be the spark that drives them to the next level. So sorry, we'll continue back to.
No, you're quite right. And going in that same vein, I understand the club, because if you move a kid down, their parents are gonna bolt. I mean, that's sure. Just how it is. I believe it was it was my son's U15 year or either U16. You know, if you go to a boys game at about 14, U14, U15, it's like a Star Wars bar scene. I mean, you got 6-footers with beards, you got, you know, 5-footers that look, you know, look like they're 12. And I mean, it's just all over the map.
Yep.
So, you know, the club got together and said, okay, you know, we need to shift because there are a lot of kids who were, you know, graded U9 and playing at this level and shouldn't have been. And there were kids who at U9 weren't there, but now they've developed and shot up. And so they just basically scrambled everything and in my opinion, put people more where they should be. Well, they probably lost 75 kids in our age group because 80 of them got moved down. So, you know, 95% of those parents bolted. So, you know, when we say the club should move kids up and down, as parents, we have to be cognizant that it may be my kid that moves down. And sometimes your kid needs to be moved down. You know, like I say, if they're playing and they're not getting playing time and they would be better off playing at a lower level, you're doing them a disservice by keeping them on that higher level team.
Well, so, and like I said, that's what happened to me in high school. Playing 90 minutes of a JV game for a whole season made me better
than sitting the bench
and not touching the field. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So then we were about to try out for ECNL and COVID hit. So just, you know, shut down the season. So we didn't have tryouts that year. We had placements. Mm-hmm. And the coach who was coaching our age group, ECNL, happened to be the club DOC. And he just got to pick his team. So he picked my son's backup over my son. So my son didn't make it. And my son's backup's dad was a coach for the club. So, you know, there's that. And he was a DOC, so there's really nothing I could say about it. You know, couldn't go any higher. So, you know, that really, I won't say it soured my son on soccer, but it took away a little of his enthusiasm.
Sure.
So that next year he played on the same team, and then his senior year coming up, well, he's in the senior year now. He didn't play for a club. He just played for a school and has hung up the cleats, unfortunately. But
so he stopped playing he's not playing club his senior year of high school.
Correct.
But he did play his junior year, but that was the kind of the COVID year.
Yeah, he played his junior year, and here in North Carolina, boys play high school in the fall. So
yeah,
he played senior year this past fall, and then he just gave it up for club.
So what is his, so he's going to college in the fall?
Yes.
And where's he going to attend? Has he picked yet?
No, Sunday is deadline day, but it is between Howard University, Hampton University, and Charlotte University.
Okay. Now, is he planning on trying to play soccer at college, or is he thinks he might be?
He's going to play club soccer.
Club, which is great.
Yeah.
So I was lucky enough. I played 4 years of Division III soccer, but then went to grad school. And while I was in grad school, I played 1 year of club for a Division I team club program and had a blast.
Yes, well,
and I went to school in DC about 5 miles down the road from Howard. So that I'm a little biased. I think he'll have a good time if he goes to Howard. But I actually played. I remember one time in college, we had a morning practice using Howard's turf field because of the weather. We needed turf, and they had it. So that's a
Well,
nice spot over there.
he actually made a pretty mature decision. You know, he loves playing soccer, but you know, he realizes that he's not willing to, you know, get up in the morning and work out before class and all that. And so he just said, you know, I'll play club soccer and have fun and enjoy it and go through my academics. So I thought that was a very mature decision.
Absolutely. And it's one of the things that, you know, one of the reasons I even started this site is to let people know there's a lot of different pathways. There's a lot of different endpoints too. It's not all Division I or bust, you know, play for a top 25 program, because there's just not that many spots available. And it's especially hard when you're navigating a 15,000 person club and trying to get on the top team to try to get noticed by the coaches at North Carolina or NC State or Clemson or wherever it is you might want to go. But there are tons of options out there, whether they be Division II, III, junior colleges, NAIA, anything like that. But one of the ones that we don't ever really talk about is club soccer at colleges. And for those who don't know what that is, it is essentially travel soccer, but under the umbrella of the school. So there's no scholarships. There's usually a staff, you know, a faculty advisor of the club, just like it would be the Spanish club or the chess club or anything else like that. It's club soccer, and there's, you know, it's really very student run. But you know, I played a year of club soccer at Ohio University, and our games were always Saturday, Sunday, so you never missed class. And we would play all over the Midwest. We drove to Northwestern in Chicago and played Northwestern and University of Illinois. We went to Ohio State, played Ohio State, Miami of Ohio. We went to Dayton and played Dayton and Xavier. And, you know, it's almost like it's the team of folks who have had that same kind of aha moment of, look, academics is the most important thing to me, but I love playing at a competitive level. And let me tell you, club soccer at a lot of colleges is very darn competitive.
Yes.
Because we had a guy on our team who had played at a different Division I program, but had transferred schools. Our school didn't have men's soccer. But he realized he wanted to focus on academics, which is why he transferred. And he was kind of our club soccer captain and leader. And then you had somebody like me I was the old guy because I was the grad student, but had played at a Division III level, and guys had played at really, really high levels. And we had a blast doing it. We still practiced. We played games. We had a full schedule. We got to travel. But, you know, we just didn't miss the class and didn't have the, you know, really hardcore scheduling requirements that a full varsity team has, even at Division II or III level. You know, so that's another pathway for people, absolutely, to continue their playing career. So I applaud your son for looking into that.
And my daughter played club soccer. I mean, not club soccer. My daughter played club rugby.
Oh, awesome.
In college. So
nice.
You know, we went to a couple of her games, so he kind of knows about that concept.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Well, Buford, I appreciate you telling the story and kind of the navigation. I think a lot of people are saying, oh, well, I thought this was going to be how all of a sudden he overcame and joined the DA team and got that full ride to somewhere. And, you know, it doesn't always end that way. And I think a lot of people need to understand that they're really, it is a difficult process. There's a lot of things to navigate, whether that's within your own club or then within the recruiting process. And a lot of it, though, hinges on what's important to you as a player or as a family, as you're making those decisions. You know, what schools are you looking at? What's the academic piece of it? What is the financial piece of it? You know, how do you want to spend your time? And really sit back and think about it, because there's, you know, if you look at the transfer portal right now, there's hundreds and hundreds of players who are looking to leave the school that they first picked because it didn't work. Now, why didn't it work? Well, there could be 100 different reasons, but a lot of what I hear and what other coaches are telling me is kids, just chased the one dream, right? The one thing, and said, oh, this school maybe gave me money so I can say I got a college soccer scholarship, but they didn't like the school. They didn't like the academics. They didn't like the location. And maybe they were the 24th guy on the roster, and didn't see time. And so now they want to go to a different school where they might see time. And so it's better if you can think about all those things ahead of time before you commit, and really take a good hard look at what's important to you. And I think, there's some other Facebook groups out there that are for soccer parents and recruiting, and talk about, the broken leg test. If something happens, would you still want to stay there? And that's a really important question to answer. So kudos to you. And I know, Buford, you've had a long multi-year journey through this. And if I'm not mistaken, you've even written about it, right?
Yes, I did write a book called The Soccer Parent Lifestyle, a formula for raising healthy, happy, and successful soccer players.
Is that available on Amazon or
Yeah,
where?
it certainly is. And it's
Okay.
also available at the soccerparentlifestyle.us.
Okay. Soccerparentlifestyle.us. Well, I'll put that in the show notes as well, so if anybody wants to check that out. And before we conclude, Buford, anything more you want to add, or let folks know?
I did want to add one thing and kind of end on a upbeat note. I want to stress to parents that your kid doesn't have to be on the top team. They don't have to play ECNL. They don't have to be in an academy or whatever to get a college roster spot. Just two examples. 3 of my son's former club teammates that played in the ECNL Regional League, the 3 didn't start. They weren't starters on their team, but all 3 of them are playing next year in college. And also 2 of my son's high school teammates that played with him this year, one has never played club soccer in his life. All he's played is school soccer. He's playing for a D3 school next year. And another gentleman who didn't start on my son's high school team is playing D3 soccer next year. So if your kid, identifies coaches, works hard, markets themselves, and looks for their right fit, there's a place out there they can play. They don't have to be ECNL. Now, is it going to be at Clemson or at Georgetown or at Stanford? No.
Right.
But it's going to be somewhere where they can get an education and further their dreams and become a productive member of society. So
absolutely. And
every kid's path is different. Focus on your kid's path. Don't compare them to others, and just help them be the best player they can be at the time, and they'll be okay.
And remember, at the end of the day, are they having fun, enjoying themselves, and loving what they do? Because if not, then what are we doing it for, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, Buford, I appreciate the time. Wish your son the best of luck next year making that decision this week.
Thank you.
We'll hope he enjoys whichever decision he makes, and thank you for sharing all the stories.
Oh, thank you for having me.